Hey everybody, and welcome to part 2 of the Evergreen Gardens park playthrough. So in the last episode, we started off the map with quite a few new rides, including some 2 steel mini coasters, a log flume, a couple car rides, actually 3 car rides, and a big looping coaster right at the end, as well as a couple other flat rides throughout. Can't quite remember what they were. Carousel and Twister, that's what they were. So yeah, I added in quite a few rides, basically spent all of the original loan size, so finances do become a bit of an issue in this part of the build, as I attempted to do, basically I'm going for a pay for entry situation rather than pay for the rides, just because, I don't know, thought I wanted to try something different, but it is proving to be a little bit more of a challenge than I was expecting. In order to basically charge most of the guests the maximum entry price, I kept the park closed while I built out most of the original set of rides, just so when we first opened the park, even the very first guests were paying the maximum entry fee possible. So I was charging $60 a ticket. So I thought that would be a better idea rather than just, starting off with $20, $30 park entry fees and having guests stay in the park forever because they've still got upwards of $50 in their pockets. Thanks very much for the name suggestions for the looping coaster. I ended up combining 2 of them basically, so I got the great suggestion Jupiter Loop from Ivrat Stargy, and also someone else, Chris Maxwell, suggested Jupiter. So what I thought I'd do was basically combine the 2, but go for a bit of an extension to the loop and call it Jupiter Looper, just because, bit of a rhyme going there. So, thanks for all the suggestions. There were some really good ones, and I felt bad not being able to use all of them. But I ended up using another name, Tiberius from Skillet Dude 07 for the little twister just next to the looping coaster. So, thanks again to everyone with the suggestion. So yeah, finally onto the build for this part of the park playthrough. So as you probably saw earlier on, I had to drag a bunch of guests back from the rest of the pathing network because I accidentally connected one bit of path, which was a bit silly, but I had to drag them all back. But then the first part of the build, I added a on-ride photo section to the looping coaster just to get a little bit more income. Then I did a bit of light decorating around that coaster, just a few trees and shrubs, nothing too exciting. Gave it a bit of a color change as well, just because I thought we'd go for some colors that were more sort of Jupiter inspired, I suppose. I hit the ad campaigns pretty hard early on as well. As I said earlier, I've kind of maxed out the loan already, so we really do need the the guests, new guests being generated, and of course the best way to do that when you're approaching the soft guest capacity, which I think I am already, then ads is definitely the way to go. Then added a nice big fountain plaza at the turnaround, that really fast turnaround of the looping coaster. Just thought it would provide a nice bit of path interaction. I didn't want that nice turn to kind of go to waste, I suppose. I thought a little garden there or just off to the side would be good. I was thinking about shoving a ride in there, which I guess I could still end up doing maybe, but I think I like the look of the fountains. Bit more decorating just around that little peninsula there. Probably went a little bit overboard with those lush green trees, but then we moved on over to the central area of the park and added a spiral slide, as well as a few other concession or food stands. Then added a pirate ship just on the water, because I always think that's a good spot to put a pirate ship, of course. I then moved over to that nice big lake, which is probably one of my favorite parts of the map, and added a Ferris wheel just on the shore there. And then I opened up a few boat hires, kind of just either side of the little pier that extended out into the water. That was actually an idea I got from Brian Andrelzik on his Diamond Heights Park playthrough, so cheers for the inspiration on that one, Brian. Then added a little drink stand just next to the Ferris wheel there, just because I thought there was probably not enough space for a ride, and we definitely needed some extra food stands out here. just gave it some nice little small ornamental trees, which, well, I really don't, I use them a bit in this playthrough, but it's something I typically don't use that often, and to be honest, I'm not really sure why, because I think they look really good. I think they don't look the best when you like span them absolutely everywhere, but they can look really nice just used, you know, 3 or 4 at a time sort of thing. As much as I probably should have left decorating around the Ferris wheel on the lake till later, I just couldn't help myself, and I wanted to add in a few rocks and shrubs around the place. I like the look of how they, yeah, I like how it all turned out, but it's probably money which I should have been saving for other purposes this early on, but it's all good. Ended up unlocking the go-karts around this time, which was great because we didn't really have that many thrill rides. It was only the Twister and a pirate ship, so yeah, thrill rides are great because they kind of hit that that medium intensity range typically. So yeah, it's it can be good because they satisfy the intensity requirements of or intensity preferences of most guests. So yeah, I threw the go-karts down. It's a medium-sized track with a tunnel. Yeah, it's not that exciting of a layout, but I think it fills up that little space quite nicely. And I feel like it's one of those rides where the area here where I put the go-karts, I feel like I always put a go-karts there every time I play Evergreen Gardens. It's just one of those things. After the go-karts were done, it was then time for another coaster. And I was really excited about putting in a little bobsleigh coaster just on the side of the hill, on the kind of other side of the entrance sort of valley, I suppose. And yeah, ended up going for almost an exact clone of Avalanche, really, at Blackpool Pleasure Beach. Ended up calling it Rock Slide, which was kind of a, you know, different twist on the Avalanche name, I suppose. And yeah, it's really kind of simple. I think the biggest key for me that I was trying to go for here is, yeah, just somewhat terrain hugging, just coming down the hill, but also not interfering too much with the path and the go-karts just below it. So yeah, there's a little bit of interaction there, but I don't think it's too bad. I ended up just giving it 1 train. It could have fit 2, but I was a little bit cautious of station brakes failures happening because it did enter the station with quite a bit of speed. So yeah, just 1 train for now. Then added a bit of an entrance plaza just at the queue for the bobsleigh coaster as well. Did a bit of decorating and a bit of path rearrangement as well, because there was quite a bit of path sitting directly under the coaster supports, which it works, but I always prefer when the coaster supports kind of, for long sections at least, I want them kind of just, you know, sitting on ground rather than above the path. Also added a wild mouse just after that, which was is another sort of coaster that I tend to add in this little corner here, just because it's such a nice little a spot for a small coaster, I feel. I mean, a flat ride could have done well also, but no, I think I like the look of the wild mouse there, and the layout ended up being pretty straightforward again, but I really like the look of it. Ended up being quite cheap as well. I think I barely spent $2,000 on it, and of course didn't have to do any landscaping apart from removing a few trees. Also gave it a shallow lift hill, as I think I've been tending towards that lately, just because I think I like the look of them better generally. The steep incline, like, although it's great for, you know, compact layouts, I think I just like the look of the shallow lift hill a little bit better. It might be more realistic as well, although I don't know too many wooden wild mouse coasters to back that up. So but yeah, did a bunch of decorating along the hillside next to the bobsleigh coaster, just filled out the area with trees and shrubs. Then decided to add another twister ride near the water. I know it's a duplicate, we've already got a twist in the park already, but every ride contributes to the soft guest cap, and that's what we were really needing at this point, because kept hitting the soft guest cap, so just needed to continue adding rides, generating park entrance income. Another great ride for this is the boat hire, just because they're so cheap, and they contribute like 40 guests, I think, to the soft guest cap, which really isn't too bad considering how cheap they are. And yeah, so just added in that swan boat ride on the other side of the lake. Just different vehicles. I had used the rowboats and canoes on those earlier 2 boat hires, so it's time for something new. Added that little info kiosk with a viewing area, a couple of viewing areas at the river, and then it was time for the big coaster for this episode. So this is a coaster I actually wanted to build a lot earlier on in the playthrough, especially when I had a little bit more money. Yeah, it's a corkscrew coaster. The reason I couldn't really get started earlier on was because I needed to unlock the vertical loop. Because in RCT1, unfortunately, with the base game scenarios, the vertical loop and the half loop don't come as like standard elements on the corkscrew coaster, so it's a little bit annoying. You've got to like research them and wait. But yeah, so I eventually unlocked them and got started on the ride. I'm sure a few of you can tell it is quite heavily inspired by Vortex, at least the opening, or the first section of it with the lift hill, steep drop, and then the kind of curved turnaround with the sweeping turns, and then the drops into the vertical loop, or the two loops. In fact, there's an extra drop in my layout just because it wouldn't quite reach otherwise. Yeah, with building this layout, I actually started with the loops just because it's often easier with these big layouts in particular. If you start off with like the showpiece or feature element or inversion and build around that, that can actually work a little bit better. So yeah, just put the loops down exactly where I wanted them, and then the rest of the layout just kind of came together reasonably easily. Added in a couple of corkscrews just on the other side of the path. I did have to hit the advertising campaigns extremely hard. I think I used like 3 or 4 at one time. Yeah, just needed to get extra revenue to fund this coaster. I had to kind of build it in different sections, I guess, because I was sitting around waiting for money at different times, but we eventually got it done. But yeah, somewhat Vortex inspired, but also just wanted to do a bit of a meandering arrow looper. I guess Dragon Mountain as well was a bit of an inspiration for this as well, especially with the bow tie inversion, which I go back and add later on when we unlock the half loop. I just thought the coaster didn't look quite long enough with like just the vertical loops and the corkscrews. I was thinking about like a Batwing inversion, like Viper at Six Flags Magic Mountain. But yeah, just I guess the Dragon Mountain inspiration got a hold of me, and I put in one of those bow tie elements instead, and I think it turned out really well, just with that little bit of path interaction, and just takes up a little bit more of that awkward space on the hillside. Added in yet another car ride. I think we're up to number 4 now, but it was a good space filler, just in amongst the supports of the corkscrew coaster. And I used the racing car vehicles, so that's just gave a little element of difference, I suppose. Then went on a bit of a painting spree and just changed a few of the car ride colors, just because I wanted the grey or black paint on the car ride, the new car ride, but I already had those 2 colors for the kind of racing car rides that I built earlier on, so I went back and changed them to like maroon and light brown, and I think that actually fits better with the Roman sort of theme anyway, so yeah, it worked out. And of course gave the corkscrew coaster a bit of a Vortex color scheme. It was then time to finally add the monorail, which I'd been procrastinating basically this entire part of the build. It's something I was planning on building a lot sooner, but it ended up being quite expensive, which I kind of anticipated, because it's quite a large map, and yeah, I think this first section of the monorail, which I opened as a shuttle to start with, that set me back like $2.5–3 grand, I think, especially with all the elevated pathways to connect up the entrance and exit. So yeah, I will eventually make this like a full circuit monorail with multiple trains, but just thought I'd want to get it open at least now, and that way it can start contributing to the soft guest cap and bring new guests in. While that was going on, I decided to use the somewhat of a dirty tactic and use the $20 umbrella trick, which, I don't know, sometimes I feel a little bit bad about doing that, but there was rain in the forecast, so I yeah, I thought why not, and I was kind of struggling with revenue as well, so yeah, got to do what you got to do. Then went back to the main sort of midway of the map and added in a couple mazes right next to the big those big gardens, yeah, towards the center of the map. I was considering removing a few of the flower beds and putting like mazes within that space, but I decided nah, I wanted to keep the original gardens. They I don't know, as much as I think they might be a little bit overboard with the flowers, it's still somewhat iconic, and I didn't want to mess with it too much. So yeah, I just put these mazes kind of at the start or just along the midway between the garden. And yeah, I think it turned out alright. Plus a nice little cheeky boost to the soft gas cap as well. Like the mazes aren't that expensive either. They're pretty small, and I think they contribute like 40-45 guests each. So yeah, super handy little additions. And yeah, I just put the exit facing the garden. So the idea is it's like a more, you know, challenging route to get into the garden, I suppose. It was then time to head back over to the back of the park with the new Corkscrew coaster and add in a couple launched freefalls. So I was really happy about unlocking these because they're some of the best value or best bang for your buck rides you can get in the game, basically. Just because they've got such great stats, they're quite cheap. But the best thing about them is they contribute like 60 or 65 guests each to the soft guest cap. So yeah, a couple of them, you really get your money's worth from them. So yeah, just make one an upward launch, one a downward launch. Instead of putting them directly side by side, I kind of stagger them a little bit, and that's again a bit of inspiration from Brian Andrelzik, who well, it's something that I typically never did, was stagger them like that. But as he points out, it kind of helps break up the grid of RCT and just makes your park look a bit less square overall, I suppose. So yeah, just add them in between the corkscrews and the loops. They do block a little bit of the coaster, especially the drop into the loops, but it's not a huge deal. I think I like the look of the freefalls in between there overall. I was considering putting them down by the river, but I kind of wanted them in this like right in the heart of this area, as my intent was this would be a bit more of a thrill ride spot. Add in a few extra paths and flower beds around the place, a few trees and shrubs. Also, I had a couple comments last episode about the time-lapse speed. So typically I record in anywhere between 6 and 8 times. I would love to hear people's feedback on this. Like if this is too fast, I'm not against slowing it down. It would just mean the videos are slightly longer. But yeah, let me know in the comments if you find this style. If you find these speeds too fast. Yeah, I just really like to know if that's the general consensus, and I can look into making some adjustments if necessary. And then I add in a chairlift that goes from kind of one hill near the freefalls to the other hill on the across the river, and just at the just above that lake. This is a ride I had in mind for quite some time. And yeah, it kind of fits in well, and it also adds a ride to the top of the hill, which doesn't look too awkward, I don't think. I think, yeah, chairlift at the top of a hill always makes sense, and yeah, isn't too invasive on the space. But anyway, that's just about it for the build. I thank you all very much for watching, and look forward to hopefully seeing you in the next video. Thank you very much, and cheers. Bye.